Welcome friends, in this video I am modifying a hitch for the front of the Raptor and installing a Badlands Apex winch on a Badlands winch hitch mount. I was wandering around a junkyard in Georgia looking for a hitch that would fit between the Raptor's front frame rails and found the perfect hitch off an old Ford Ranger, but the bolts were totally seized and there was no way to pull it. Later on I did end up finding a similar design on an old Ford Super Duty. I brought it home for 80 bucks and used a bandsaw to cut off the main square tube. After a bit of measuring, I cut off the excess tube before turning to the mounting arms. I wanted to use the same basic design and take advantage of the mounting holes behind the tow hooks, including one for the skid plate mount. I made a template out of cardboard and cut the arms to the right shape. When I got to the bend, I thought I could score the 1/4-inch steel halfway and then bend it with a cheap brake, but that did not work. It turned out that I needed to nearly completely cut through the steel and chamfer the cut to allow it to bend. Then I welded the inside and outside. On the truck, I test fit the arm and determined where to drill, and also cut out a nice notch for the skid plate mount's vertical tab to sit in. Once the holes were drilled, I disconnected the truck's batteries and prepped the main tube, setting it between the arms for some tack welds. I finish welded it and threw some VHT roll bar and chassis paint on. In the house, my pup helped me unbox the Badlands winch hitch mount and the Apex 12,000 winch with synthetic line. I was a little overwhelmed with how many bolts I had. I had the bolts from the mount, I had the bolts from the winch, and even the Fairlead came with a couple sets of bolts. I realized that at first though, I needed to install the winch wiring before actually placing it in the mount. I also eventually found the right bolts and bolted down the winch. I should have installed the handles next, but I did the Fairlead first. This made it very difficult to tighten down the handle bolts. But now that it was all together, I needed to set up the winch line for the Yankum Ropes Groove Fairlead. I cut off the metal loop from the line, wrapped the line in tape, and taped on a center punch, running the line back through itself and creating a new loop. Everything was finally done and it was time to install. I bolted in the hitch using some grade 10 hardware along with the skid plate mounts. Then I slid the winch into position, adjusting it to get the power cables through the hole that I had to cut in the bumper trim. Then I ran the wires up to the battery and hooked everything up. I had to use the cable on the first time with the remote since the remote's batteries were dead or it just wasn't working. But it definitely worked once I got the cable on. Alright, so final thoughts are that not having the right tool for the job can be time consuming. I think it took me 2 hours to cut, bend, and weld the arms, which was awful. While that was hard, I was surprised how easy it was to fix the winch line after cutting off the metal loop. I don't know why I thought it would be hard, but there are lots of useful videos and written instructions on how to do it. The hitch mount for the winch is definitely heavier than I thought, and it's very sturdy, as it should be. I was originally nervous about buying it and trying it out, but it's great. I made the front hitch before my long trip back from Georgia to Washington State. I had the truck completely packed, so I needed to externally mount the winch. There's a lot of wobble in the winch mount, so I ended up buying a Harbor Freight hitch tightener, and it was great. I'd like to build a frame cut front bumper, and I'm not sure if I should swap in a normal winch mount for the front when I do that and keep everything tucked up high. My current setup keeps it pretty far out, and it's not easy to put it on there and secure it. In the frame cut configuration, it would look goofy, I think, and I'm not sure that I would really gain any approach angle. I feel like I'd get stuck and then not be able to even mount the winch. The benefit of the hitch mount is that I can do the front or the rear and have wiring points there. But the downside is that this setup is heavy and I'm already close to busting my weight limit. I wouldn't want to have both a front and rear winch for the same reason. I'm interested in what y'all think. Limit myself to only a front winch or keep the hitch mount option and store the winch in the bed. Ultimately, this current setup works and it's definitely an option. Oh, and it's not on the list, but the Yankum Ropes Groove Fairlead is awesome. It's a great design. It just makes me a little bit nervous having my fingers around it. Anywho, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.